I absolutely hate outcomes like this. Hate them with a blinding passion. That's why we have to cover it. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. Every day we post a real life use of force caught on camera here at Active Self-Protection so that your training and practice can be more research informed. I am your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Middletown, Ohio.
Lucky Gunner is my recommended trusted provider of freedom seeds for range or defensive use. In stock, good prices, and rocket fast shipping are why I go back again and again. Because of new guidelines, I can't link their site or say it, but you're smart and you can find it with a simple Google search. Stick it to the man by paying them a visit today. Police are responding here to 911 calls from the neighbor that there's a significant domestic disturbance inside this apartment. It's two men, she said, that are having a big fight. Officers are responding. Let's listen in and hear what happens. We have multiple badge cams.
Middletown Police! Middletown Police! Shots fired, 104, Park Lane. Shots fired, control. Shots fired, 104, Park Lane. Control. Fired. Go out there.
You want me to come down there, Rollins, or me stay up here?
Come down here.
Come behind you.
I'm behind you. Where's the gun at?
It was in his right hand. It was in his right. It's right there on that table.
Oh my God.
You see it?
Yeah. What happened?
Hey, back up! Back up!
No! Where's the gun at?
It's under that table right there.
All right. I'm gonna.
Emergency traffic calling.
You can go watch the original if you would like. The son is distraught, and of course you would completely understand that. They get the gun away from him. They did do first aid and tried to save this guy's life. He didn't make it. If you go read the news story that I linked in the description, during the fight, the son later said that he and the dad had a fight because dad had started a fire in the fireplace with the flue closed, and that's where all the smoke was coming from in here. And then in his fight with his dad, they ended up getting physical with each other a little bit. And in that, dad said that everyone hated him and it's better off if he was dead. So this does feel a little bit like a suicide by cop to me when you have that information. It's an important piece of information there. Grand jury looked at this and decided that the officer's actions were justified and that they would no bill, in other words, not bring a bill of charges against the officer because his actions were justified. I just hate these, Mike, because I feel like at the end of the day, nobody did anything illegal. And yet it's all wrong as a football bat.
Yeah, we've seen a couple like this already before with the threshold of the door, the shooting, and no matter how we call it, people are going to disagree with us. That's okay. That's why we're here. So leave us a comment. Let us know what you think.
I want to say at the beginning here, Mike, that piece of information about the perp here saying, hey, everyone hates me and I'm better off dead, that adds a significant kind of tinge to this whole thing that I want to be cautious because the badge cam doesn't always show the whole story. And in fact, it often doesn't show the whole story. And we got to take that into account when we're looking at events like this.
It's worth noting, I feel like, that information was not made known to the officers. That information was found out after the fact from the decedent's adult son. So it wasn't like the neighbor who called knew all that and was able to relay that to police, and then they knew, okay, this is a potential situation. Had they known that, they might have taken a very different course of action. And listen, I'm going to say right off the rip here, it doesn't look great from a couple of these angles. If you don't slow it down and really meticulously look at it frame by frame, it looks like this officer was a little quick on the trigger. So John and I both understand the optics and how it looks, but stick around because there's a lot more to it than that.
There really is. And of course, from an officer training perspective, you've got to expect when you have a domestic, it is dangerous. And these officers, I think, did a pretty okay job of staging themselves. So from a, kind of a policy and a tactics perspective here, they stayed out of the front of the door. They knocked very loudly. They announced themselves very loudly. And of course, coming to the door with a gun in your hand when you're hearing that bang, 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 police, man, I can't fault the officers for what they did here and how they staged up.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to talk about this some more later, I'm sure. But listen, if someone's knocking on your door, you're not sure who it is. We've been over this, I think, 3 or 4 times with similar videos where people come to their door armed. Look, it's your right to do that. Sure, absolutely. However, it is insanely dangerous to do so. We'll cover this more in a little bit, but I just don't understand the mentality of there's someone at my door who's potentially dangerous. Let me go out with a gun. Leave the door closed. Use the peephole. Call 911 and ask, are they real police? There's 1,000 other things you can do. And understand these officers are going to be a little amped up. They're called there for a domestic. Domestics are notoriously dangerous. So this whole thing, unfortunately, was entirely predictable.
And if you look when he opens the door, look at the badge cam of the officer. Now, you got to recognize that the officer here is a step down. So he's a little lower than our decedent here. And if you look at the decedent's left hand, he has a gun in that hand, and that gun is generally pointed in the direction of the officer. It's kind of coming up in that direction. Did he mean to do that? I don't think so. I think that he's looking kind of down the hallway rather than at the officer. But we got to also recognize here, this is very important. What is the officer seeing? He shouldn't be looking at the man's face. He should be looking at his hands. He should be looking at the doorknob area, that kind of waist level, because the hands are the windows to the intent and where all the bad things come from. All he sees here is a gun in this guy's hand, generally pointed in his direction, coming out the door. And that is a critical piece of information. He can't do what we're doing right now and see the whole picture in 4K. He's got foveal vision. You and I both do too. And just seeing that, Mike, he's got seconds here, like split seconds, to decide, is this guy a deadly threat or not?
Yeah, and as John and I talked in our pre-brief extensively, the police don't have a choice. They can't not knock on this door. They can't just ignore this domestic call. They've been called there by the neighbor, and now it is their job, it is their duty to investigate. They did everything right prior to this door opening, by the way. This officer didn't stand in front of the door. You saw the officer on the stairs kind of get up and out of the way a little bit, just in case someone came to the door with a gun or shot through the door. That's policing 101, is don't stand in front of the door. It's a dangerous spot. They have to be here. They have no choice. They have to knock on the door. And all the information they have is there's a loud domestic dispute going on that might have been physical. And now this is the first thing they see when the door opens, is somebody with a gun. The gun is generally pointed in the direction of this officer whose badge cam we're watching. I guess I would ask someone who questions the shooting, what would you have him do? If he says, stop, drop the gun, or something else like that, in the time that it takes him to say that, he could have 3 or 4 rounds in him. It takes just a split second for this guy we're looking at here to get that gun up and in the fight. So this is just why we don't come to the door with guns in our hands.
And I also totally understand that, you look at this and you go, God, this outcome sucks, because this outcome sucks. This is a super kind of bad outcome, poor ending, and not what we want if at all possible. But the officers can't just ignore this. They got to come and knock on the door. They got to recognize this is a domestic. Then the guy comes to the door with a gun in his hand, pointing it in the direction of the officer. Man, I don't know exactly what we're going to do here. It's just a Kobayashi Maru, right? So if you understand that reference, go get your colonoscopy. But he's stuck in a no-win situation is where he is, and he chooses to defend his life. I think our second officer here, this is kind of an important bit, that our officer who's down the kind of stairwell a little bit draws his gun as well. He sees what's going on here, and his response to that is to draw his gun. Now, a couple things that I see in this, Mike. Number one, that tells me he sees a similar level of threat. But number two, he recognizes that he doesn't have a shot here by the time he gets his gun out because he's a little slower. And also, he doesn't have priority of fire. So to me, there's more than one officer that sees a deadly threat here and some good decision-making by an officer who chooses not to press the trigger.
Yeah, priority of fire is a real thing. Look, could he have shot here? I suppose he could have. Would it have been wise to do so? No, it would not. And this really does demonstrate the principle John and I are always banging on about each individual law enforcement officer needs to have independently, I should say, determine there is a threat that requires a response of deadly force. So if you notice, I don't think the officer behind the officer at the door drew his gun because he didn't see what was going on, at least not yet. Now, could these officers have drawn their guns because they saw the guy at the door draw the gun? Yeah, and guess what? That's okay. Drawing a gun is fine. Shooting the gun might have been a bad idea for this guy. So I think what I'm trying to point out here is this officer we're looking at and the officer at the door were the two that could see the threat immediately and drew their guns, and that's what I expect them to do. This officer holding back and going, I think priority of fire is a thing. I think the guy at the door has this handled, and if I start shooting right now, I'm potentially going to get a blue on blue situation. So he refrained. And prudent and judicious use of firearms is what I want to see from my officer. So well done, I think, on his part.
Yeah, prudent and judicious use of force. What great words, man. Just officers, please put those in your mind. Now, I do think, again, we've got to really sit and think here because this officer has a very good view of what happens from the door. He's in a very interesting spot. Will probably be who first gets seen. Now, he chooses not to draw his gun, but I think it's kind of interesting, Mike, because now, again, where the badge cam is here is not what the officer sees, okay? It's not from his vision perspective, but from here, the guy's hand is a little bit kind of, obscured a little bit here right now, so it takes him a second to see that. Here's, though, where I really want to talk about coming to the door with a gun in your hand. Now, this guy, I really do think, he had said, everyone hates me, I'm no good, the world will be better off without me. That's in the news story, okay? As the guy's son told the police later. So this very well could be suicide by cop. And if that's the case, it's terrible. I just decry death by suicide. It just hurts so bad. And this has come close to me on so many occasions, and it hurts my soul so badly. Setting that aside, for the most of us who are not, having suicidal ideations, I just think there's so many options here to not come to the door with a gun in your hand. Because if you go, hey, I'm going to, it's my constitutional right to come to the door with a gun in my hand. Yeah, but it's stupid. If you think there's a potential for a deadly threat out there, don't go out the door. Leave the barrier in place. You got to pull Mr. Robinson's neighborhood here. Who is it? Rather than try to go out into that. And if you're like, well, they said they're the cops, so call 911. Are there police officers at my door? When the 911 operator says yes, put the gun down and answer the door.
Yep, 100%. That's always my advice. If you hear knocking at your door, especially at an odd hour, and someone saying police, use your ring cam, use your peephole, use whatever you've got to verify that they're uniformed police. If you're not sure, maybe you think, I don't know, it's a RIP crew dressed like police or whatever it is going through your mind, call 911. And they will tell you, they're not going to lie to you. They're going to tell you, yeah, the police got a call to your house. Please go to the door unarmed and talk to them. And odds are this whole thing would have ended with him probably going to a hospital or going to a psychiatric intervention center or something for a period of time to get the help he needs. Instead, this is a result. And I have to point this out again. It's so critical. Because every time we have one of these, the comment section is full of people saying, murder, it's murder, the police murdered the guy, it's my right to come to the door with a gun. Listen, I want you, the viewer, if you're watching this at home, I want you to be safe, right? I want you to make it through an encounter like this. Say somebody swats you and calls the police on you for no reason, or whatever the case might be. Just please don't do this. Please use your people. Use your Zoom cam. Call 911 and verify it's who it is, and then open the door or don't. Look, if you don't want to open your door for the police, you don't have to. If they have a legal reason to go in, they'll do that. So I'm just really stressing here that is it his right to do that, to come to the door of his domicile with a gun? Yeah, it's his right to do that. But this is a predictable result of that, unfortunately. So please just don't. That's the overarching principle of this video is please don't do this if it's you and someone's knocking on your door.
Yeah, we don't want you to be dead right. We just don't want that to happen. Now, tactics from a perspective here. This is about 0.6 seconds before the officer begins drawing his gun. So this is kind of where he starts to see. You notice that he's cheated his draw, put his hand on his holstered pistol. And it's going to take him a bit in order to kind of, about 0.4 seconds to see the visual stimulus that he's like, oh no, I got to go. So recognize that visual stimuli and the processing time really matter. So being fast from the holster is good, but it's from your perspective of when the go signal is and you decide, oh, I gotta go, that we tend to kind of see things. And this right here is that quarter second before he starts moving. So we're going to talk here, we talk about this from a human performance perspective, not from a decision-making perspective. It takes about 0.4 seconds to kind of get through that OODA loop, not OODA, OODA, observe, orient, decide, and act loop that Colonel Boyd is famous for. Here he's already decided, and now he's got to act, okay? So he's got OOD done, and now the action happens. How fast do you want that to go? You notice here, Mike, this guy, the gun is kind of up now and rising a little bit, not a ton, but again, he's got split seconds here. So how fast do you want to be out of the holster? For me and for mine, I want to be as fast as I can because I have the rest of my life to get the gun in the fight.
Yeah, leave all the whether or not it was a good shoot aside for a minute. Let's just talk about tactics, like John said. This is remarkably fast reaction time to this observed threat. The officer, we say he cheated his draw, and some people might be like, wow, he had his hand on his gun. He wanted to shoot somebody. No, I can't tell you how many times on traffic stops and at doors like this, I had my hand on my gun because I thought I might need it. As it turns out, he did need it. So the time it takes him to observe this potential threat, the gun in his hand, orient himself to the situation. Okay, this is what's happening. Decide and act is really, I don't know, John, was it less than a second from the time he saw the gun to the time he pulled the trigger?
It was right about 1.2 seconds is where it ended up. So now when you take into account the 0.4 or so from his visual processing time, now you're talking about his reaction from, like, if you were doing an audible stimulus, his actual go time to bang is about 0.8. And that is, I mean, pretty rocket ship fast. Now, is his technique perfect? No. Is his, one hand on the gun and kind of letting him rip what I would recommend? No. But in the moment, he's close enough that he gets good, effective, fight-stopping hits. And if we see it here, he kind of gets the gun out 1, 2, 3, 4. Those all come in rapid succession. I don't love only one hand on the gun. I'd really prefer two, but again, he's close enough. He's got enough capability here that he is able to do that. And I note that when the guy goes down, the officer starts moving, gets out of the danger zone, and he stops shooting. So I think from a tactics, from a techniques perspective, I don't love the one-handed shooting, but I totally understand it under the stress of the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly if he was getting on his radio. It kind of looks like maybe he was reaching for a microphone in front of him in a center line somewhere. If that's the case, I hope that officers who are doing their mental reps, right, or they're doing work on the range, doing force on force, I hope that they're not imagining themselves getting on the radio in the middle of a shooting. Look, you've decided this person needs to be shot to stop what they're doing, to keep you and others from being harmed by this person. Always two hands on the gun. If you're in a gunfight, be in the gunfight. Don't be anywhere else. Don't be thinking about, what are the consequences going to be? Am I in trouble? Are there more units? I think he had 3 other officers at least there with him. So who were you calling for, really? I'm not sure. John, am I wrong, or did he appear to be going for his radio with his left hand?
It's hard to say, but I think you're right. I think he is going for his radio. And you got to remember, win the fight. You have 4 police officers there. You literally have all of the help that you possibly can. And I've heard somebody say, well, you want to get it on the radio because you want it to be recorded in terms of the time. They're all wearing badge cams. You've got all the recording of the information that you could possibly need. Win the fight. I think that there's something going on in police officer training right now that they are absolutely just lifeline dependent on their radio. It's actually something I see sometimes with pilots too. Again, how do you know somebody's a pilot? Don't worry, they'll tell you. I fly little planes, and you see some people that, they're announcing an emergency on the radio, and I'm like, dude, nobody's coming to fly your plane. You're going to have to solve the problem yourself. Figure out the problem first, and then tell air traffic control after you've got the problem solved what help you can use in the solution that you've chosen. Stay off the dang radio. Now, in the follow-up here, I think they did a pretty well and okay job of trying to stage up. Are we okay? Are we safe to get in there? We need to get in there. They do. I think they handled the son well. I think they handled the dog well and take care of the pupper. You can tell these guys aren't ATF agents, because the dog lived. And they did the best they could. This is a crap situation. This is not the kind of outcome that we want. This is not, everybody goes home and yay, the bad guy is down and, we're meat-eating crime fighters. This is crap and it's tough. But I don't blame the officers a bit. I think that the officer who fired did what he had to do in the moment. I think that we really do need to bolster and strengthen our mental health care system in America. We need to make sure that, hopefully people are getting the help they need before we got to call the cops on them because they're having a big fight with their son and getting physical with each other in their house and scaring the neighbors. That would be an important step as well, so that we're not ending up with the cops banging on your door and announcing themselves and you end up getting shot. It's bad stuff. From a private citizen perspective, hear me, friends, don't answer the door with a gun in your hand. There's better answers there. Leave that door locked until you're sure there's not a threat out there, and then you don't need a gun. This is the way that we keep this kind of stuff from happening and cover our ass.